The stars looked different when you were dying among them. Captain James Chen stared at the view screen and watched another explosion tear through the colony fleet. 50,000 souls trapped in metal boxes falling through the void with no way home. The navigation systems had failed 3 jumps ago. Some kind of spatial anomaly that the old Earth computers couldn't process. Now 12 colony ships drifted in unknown space. Life support failing, food running low. Children cried in the lower decks. Parents held them close and whispered lies about rescue coming soon. James knew better. They were 4 months from the nearest human outpost. The distress beacon barely had enough power to reach neighboring systems. And even if someone heard it, who would come? Humanity was new to the stars. They had no friends out here, no allies, just the cold mathematics of survival in an indifferent universe. The sensor operator called out. "Captain, we have contacts." 3 ships dropping out of FTL. James felt his heart sink. Pirates, probably, coming to pick the bones of a dead fleet. He reached for the weapons controls, knowing they had maybe one good fight left in them before the power gave out completely. But the ships that appeared on the view screen were like nothing he had seen before. Elegant curves instead of hard angles, hull plating that shimmered like oil on water, and they were big. Each one could swallow his flagship twice over. The communication channel crackled to life. The translator struggled with the alien language, but the meaning came through clear enough. "Human vessels, we are the Valorian Collective. We received your distress call. Do you require assistance?" James looked at his crew. They stared back with hollow eyes and desperate hope. He had heard stories about first contact situations going wrong, species that saw weaker civilizations as prey. But what choice did they have? "This is Captain James Chen of the Earth Colony Fleet. Yes, we need help. Our navigation is damaged and we're running out of supplies." There was a pause. Then the alien voice returned. Warmer this time. "We see your situation, Captain Chen. Stand by. We are sending repair teams to your vessels. Please do not be alarmed." Small craft launched from the alien ships. They attached to the colony vessels with careful precision. Hatches opened and the humans got their first look at the Valorians. They stood about 5 feet tall, covered in feathers that shifted between blue and silver. Large eyes dominated faces that seemed almost kind. Delicate hands carried tools and medical supplies. They moved through the damaged ships with purpose and grace. The head engineer, a Valorian named Silthar, worked on the navigation computer for 6 hours straight. James brought him water and food, which Silthar accepted with a grateful nod. Finally, the alien stepped back from the console. "Your systems are repaired. But Captain, these navigation charts you have are very old. Dangerous old. This region of space has changed much since these maps were made. You would have died if you went much further." James felt cold understanding wash over him. "We didn't know. Earth only sent us what they had." Silthar made a soft sound, almost like a sigh. "Then it is good we found you. Come, we will give you proper charts and food, and medical supplies for your sick. And fuel for your ships, why?" The question escaped James before he could stop it. "Why are you helping us? What do you want in return?" The Valorian looked at him with those large, expressive eyes. "What do we want?" "Nothing, Captain. We help because you need help. Because the stars are vast and cold and the living must care for each other. This is the way of the Valorian Collective. Stars shared freely." Over the next week, the Valorians did everything they promised and more. They transferred enough supplies to get the colony fleet to its destination, with room to spare. They gave humanity detailed star charts that showed safe routes through dangerous space. They even shared the basic principles of their FTL technology, upgrades that would make human ships twice as fast. The Galactic Council heard about it, of course. They sent a stern message to the Valorians, asking why they would share such advanced technology with a primitive species. The Valorians replied simply that humanity had earned their help by surviving against impossible odds. On the day the colony fleet prepared to depart, James met with the Valorian commander aboard her flagship. She was old, her feathers tinged with gray, but her eyes were sharp and kind. "I don't know how to thank you," James said. "You saved us all. 50,000 people who would have died without you." The commander placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Then live well, Captain Chen. Build your colonies. Raise your children. Let them see the stars with wonder instead of fear." "That is thanks enough." James straightened to attention. "I swear to you on behalf of all humanity we will never forget this. What you've done for us today. If you ever need help, any help at all, we will come. No matter the cost," the Valorian commander smiled. "I believe you will, Captain." I see it in your eyes. Humans have something special, a fire that burns bright. Remember us kindly, and that is payment enough. The colony fleet jumped to FTL following the new charts to safety. Behind them, the Valorian ships turned back to their patrol routes, disappearing into the dark between stars. James Chen kept his promise. He told the story of their rescue to everyone who would listen. It was written into the colony's founding documents, taught to children in their schools, carved into monuments on every human world. 3 simple words became humanity's creed: we will remember. 300 years passed. Humanity grew strong among the stars. They built fleets and forged alliances, but they never forgot the debt they owed to the people who saved them when they had nothing to offer in return. And when the darkness came for Valoria, the galaxy would learn what it meant when humanity remembered. Admiral Elena Kovac was 9 years old when the Valorians saved her family. She remembered being hungry and scared on the colony ship, remembered her mother holding her close and singing soft songs. She remembered the beautiful bird people who brought food and fixed the broken machines and made everything right again. Now she stood on the bridge of the ESS Remembrance, humanity's largest warship, and watched the emergency broadcast from the Galactic Council. Her hands gripped the railing until her knuckles turned white. The hologram showed the council chamber, filled with representatives from 200 species. The image was clear enough. A massive fleet of ships, black as the void between stars, consuming everything in their path, world after world going silent. 12 species completely destroyed in just 6 months. The Carxel swarm, a hive mind from dark space where normal physics broke down. They didn't want territory or resources. They just wanted to consume biological matter for food, technology for building more ships. They were a plague given form and purpose. The council speaker, a crystalline being from the Nexus Collective, projected calm authority. The swarm has made contact. They have given us a choice: surrender the Valorian system to them, or they will attack every populated world in this sector. The minerals on Valoria Prime are rare and valuable to them. If we give them what they want, they will leave in peace. Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. She pulled up the navigation data. Valoria was 3 weeks away at maximum FTL. The council vote would happen in 4 days. Her second-in-command, Commander Liu, stood beside her. Admiral, surely they won't actually vote to abandon the Valorians. Not after everything they've done for galactic peace. Elena pulled up the historical records. The Valorians gave 60 species their FTL technology over the last 1,000 years. They've shared medical advances that saved billions. They ask for nothing and give everything. She closed the file and looked at Liu. That's exactly why the council will sacrifice them. They're an easy target. A small population. Only one heavily populated world. The math makes sense if you ignore basic decency. The response from the Galactic Council came 3 days later. Elena watched the vote count with her entire senior staff gathered around. 200 species voting on whether to protect the people who had given so much to the galaxy. The final tally appeared on the screen. 147 voted to surrender Valoria. 32 voted to fight. 21 abstained. Humanity voted to fight. They were alone in their conviction among the major powers. Elena opened a channel to Earth. The connection took 5 minutes to establish. When the Secretary General appeared on the screen, the woman looked like she had aged 10 years overnight. Admiral Kovac, I assume you've seen the vote. Yes, ma'am. What are your orders? The Secretary General looked directly at Elena. I've called an emergency session of Parliament. Every representative, every senator, every voice that speaks for humanity. We need a decision, and we need it now. Elena waited. The connection stayed open but silent for 4 hours. She imagined the debate happening on Earth. The practical voices arguing that humanity couldn't fight a force that had destroyed 12 spacefaring civilizations. The idealists saying that honor mattered more than survival. The military advisors calculating odds and finding them wanting. When the Secretary General returned, her face was set with determination. The vote was unanimous, Admiral. Every single voice agreed. We remember what the Valorians did for us. We remember that they saved 50,000 lives when they had no reason to. We remember that they gave us the stars. The woman paused and Elena saw tears in her eyes. Activate Protocol Darkfall. Bring every ship home. We're going to war. Elena felt her heart pound. Protocol Darkfall. The contingency plan humanity had built in secret for 300 years. The plan they hoped they would never need. Ma'am, that means withdrawing from all galactic treaties. It means revealing capabilities we've kept hidden. It means showing the galaxy what we're really capable of. I know what it means, Admiral. But the Valorians showed us who they were when we were weak and helpless. Now it's time we showed them who we are. Send the message to all human worlds. Tell them to come home. Tell them we have a debt to pay. Elena recorded the message herself. She kept it simple because the situation didn't need complicated words. This is Admiral Elena Kovac to all human vessels and colonies. The Galactic Council has voted to abandon the Valorian people to the Carxel swarm. 300 years ago, the Valorians saved humanity when we had nothing to offer in return. They asked for no payment. They expected no reward. They simply helped because it was right. She paused and looked directly at the camera. Today, humanity answers that kindness. We are withdrawing from all galactic treaties. We are recalling every ship. We are activating every defense protocol. And we are going to Valoria. Anyone who stands in our way will be treated as hostile. Anyone who helps the swarm will share their fate. The message went out on every frequency. Every human world received it simultaneously. And one by one, the responses came back. Mars sent its entire defense fleet, 200 warships. Titan Colony contributed their experimental weapons. Europa Station deployed their newly constructed dreadnought. Even the small mining outposts on the rim sent what they had. Old patrol boats, converted freighters, anything that could mount a weapon and make the jump to FTL. The civilian corporations joined in. Nakamura Industries donated their prototype nanoweapons. Chen Petrov Solutions offered their AI-guided drone swarms. Westfall Dynamics gave the military their relativistic missile systems, technology that humanity had developed in secret, preparing for the day when someone threatened their existence. Within a week, 3,000 human ships were converging on Valoria, the largest military mobilization in human history, all for a people who had asked for nothing and expected nothing in return. Ambassador Trilix of Valoria sent a personal message to Elena. The old Valorian appeared on the screen, his silver-blue feathers marked with the gray of age. Admiral Kovac, we have heard what humanity plans. We are grateful, truly. But you must not do this. The swarm is too powerful. You will all die for nothing. Please save your people. We accept our fate. Elena smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. Ambassador, 300 years ago your people saved mine. You taught us that the living must care for each other, that the stars should be shared freely. Well, we learned that lesson, and now the galaxy is going to learn what happens when you threaten someone humanity cares about. She ended the transmission and turned to her crew. Set course for Valoria. Maximum speed. And someone send a message to the Carxel swarm. Tell them that humanity has drawn a line. Tell them that if they cross it, we'll show them what real darkness looks like. The galaxy watched in real time as humanity transformed. Every human world activated wartime production simultaneously. Factories that built colony ships retooled their assembly lines for warships. Mining operations that extracted resources for peaceful expansion now funneled everything into weapons manufacturing. Civilian vessels received military-grade shields and weapon systems. The other species had seen humanity as friendly neighbors. A bit aggressive perhaps, but ultimately harmless. Mid-tier technology, moderate military strength, nothing to worry about. They were wrong. The first shock came when Earth unveiled the Cerberus-class dreadnoughts. Ships 3 times larger than any human vessel previously recorded, 20 of them, built in secret orbital yards hidden behind Jupiter's gravity well. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet by itself. Commander Liu stood in the war room aboard the Remembrance, watching the tactical displays update as more human ships arrived at the staging point. Admiral, I'm getting reports from the outer colonies. They're asking if we really want them to activate the Scorched Earth protocols. Elena didn't look up from the strategic map she was studying. Yes, all of them. If the swarm comes for human worlds, we leave them nothing but radioactive ash. They want to consume us. Let them choke on poison. A junior officer at the communication station looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, the Galactic Council is requesting an emergency meeting. They're saying our mobilization is destabilizing the sector. They want us to stand down. Elena laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound. Tell them we'll stand down when the Valorians are safe. Until then, they can send all the diplomatic messages they want. We're not listening. The tactical display showed 3,000 human ships now, with more arriving every hour. But numbers weren't what made the galaxy nervous. It was what humanity was revealing about those ships. The Nexus Collective sent a probe to observe the human fleet. What they saw terrified them. Every human warship carried weapons that the galaxy thought were still theoretical. Quantum disruption cannons that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. Nano-weapon systems that could turn an enemy vessel into expanding clouds of programmed matter. Relativistic missiles that traveled at 99% light speed, hitting with the force of small stars. How long? The Nexus ambassador demanded in an emergency council session. How long have the humans been developing these weapons? The human representative, Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo, smiled coldly. Since the day we joined the galactic community, you all thought we were naive, friendly, harmless. We let you think that because it made you comfortable. The truth is that humanity learned a lesson long ago. The universe doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't reward the peaceful or protect the innocent. So we prepared. We built weapons that would make anyone think twice about threatening us or our friends. This is madness, the Nexus ambassador said. You're risking galactic war over one small species. The Carxel will destroy you all. Sarah leaned forward. Maybe, but they'll remember us. Every species in the galaxy will remember what humanity did here. They'll remember that when our friends needed us, we came, not with diplomatic notes or economic sanctions. We came with fire and fury and the absolute certainty that some things are worth dying for. The human fleet continued to grow, 4,000 ships now, then 5,000. The small mining colonies sent converted cargo haulers with plasma cannons welded to their hulls. The research stations contributed their experimental vessels. Even civilian volunteers showed up in private yachts that had been hastily armed with missile pods. Elena walked through the hangar bay of the Remembrance and saw the preparation happening at every level. Engineers working 18-hour shifts to optimize the weapons. Pilots running simulation after simulation of combat scenarios. Marines checking and rechecking their boarding equipment. She stopped at one of the fighter bays where a young pilot was painting something on her ship. The words read, "For those who saved us." You know what we're up against? Elena asked. The pilot, barely 20 years old, nodded. Yes, ma'am. A hive mind horror that's destroyed 12 civilizations. Odds are we won't come back. She finished painting the letters and turned to face Elena. My grandmother was on one of those colony ships 300 years ago. The Valorians saved her life. Without them, I wouldn't exist. So yeah, I know what we're up against. And I know why we're fighting. Elena gripped the young woman's shoulder. Good. Remember that when things get hard. Remember why we're here. The weapons demonstrations came next. Humanity wanted the galaxy to understand exactly what they were dealing with. The Fifth Fleet held a live fire exercise in an empty system. Target asteroids were set up at various ranges. The quantum disruption cannons fired first. Space itself seemed to scream as the beams tore through normal physics. The target asteroids didn't just explode. They ceased to exist, erased from reality at the quantum level. Next came the nanoweapons. Gray clouds expanded from missile impacts, consuming the remaining asteroids molecule by molecule. In 3 minutes, kilometer-wide rocks were reduced to clouds of constituent atoms. Finally, the relativistic missiles. They appeared on sensors and then, a microsecond later, impacted their targets. The energy release was visible from 3 light hours away. Small artificial stars blooming in the dark. The galaxy watched these demonstrations and felt something they hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. Raw, primal fear of what humanity could do if pushed. The council sent another message. A formal plea. Please reconsider. The Carxel cannot be reasoned with. They will destroy you all. Is one species worth sacrificing your entire civilization? Elena recorded the response herself. She wanted the galaxy to see her face when she said it. 300 years ago, the Valorians had a choice. They could have passed by our distressed ships and saved their resources. They could have left us to die in the dark between stars. But they didn't. They helped us because it was right. Because the living must care for each other. Because the stars should be shared freely. She paused and let the silence stretch. Now you ask if the Valorians are worth our sacrifice. You ask if we're willing to risk everything for one species. The answer is yes. Because that's what you do for people who showed you kindness when you had nothing. That's what you do for friends. And if the galaxy can't understand that, then maybe the galaxy deserves to bow to the darkness. The human fleet reached 6,000 ships, the largest armada ever assembled by a single species. And still they came, old veterans bringing their personal vessels out of retirement. Young pilots eager to prove themselves. Engineers and scientists who wanted to see their weapons put to use. Elena stood on the bridge of the Remembrance and looked at the tactical display. The Carnaxal swarm was 3 days away from Valoria. The human fleet would arrive in 4 days. They would be too late to prevent the initial attack. But they would be in time to show the swarm something it had never encountered before. An enemy that fought not for survival or resources, but for the simple, terrible principle that debts must be paid. All ships. Elena broadcast to the fleet. This is Admiral Kovac. In 3 days we face an enemy that has never known defeat. They think we're just another species to be consumed and forgotten. Let's teach them about humanity. Let's show them what happens when you threaten our friends. And let's make sure that 300 years from now, people tell stories about the day humanity paid its debt. The fleet jumped to FTL, leaving behind a galaxy that was finally beginning to understand what they had failed to see for 3 centuries. Humanity wasn't mid-tier or moderate. They had simply been waiting for a reason to show their true strength. And that reason had just arrived in the form of a threat to the people who had saved them when they were weak and helpless. The darkness was coming for Valoria. But humanity was coming too, and they were bringing their own darkness with them. The Carnaxal swarm dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Valorian system with the confidence of a predator that had never known fear. 10,000 bioships, each one a nightmare of organic technology and hive mind intelligence. They had consumed 12 civilizations. They had faced advanced weapons and desperate last stands. They always won. The swarm consciousness broadcast on all frequencies. The voice was multiple voices layered together, speaking as one mind. Valorian Collective. You have 6 hours to evacuate your world. After that, we will begin consumption. Resistance is illogical. Compliance is survival. Ambassador Trillick stood in the planetary command center surrounded by his people. The evacuation had been going for 3 days, but they couldn't save everyone. Not in time. 2 billion Valorians remained on the surface, knowing that death was coming. He prepared to send the surrender message when every sensor in the command center lit up simultaneously. Ships were dropping out of FTL, hundreds of them, then thousands. The space around Valoria filled with human vessels until they formed a solid defensive wall between the planet and the swarm. Elena's voice came through on the priority channel. Ambassador Trilix, this is Admiral Kovac. Sorry we're a bit late. Traffic was terrible. Please keep your people on the surface. This won't take long. The swarm detected the human fleet and paused its advance. The hive mind analyzed the new data. 6,000 ships versus 10,000. Inferior numbers. Mid-tier technology according to all galactic databases. This would be a minor delay at most. The swarm broadcast again, this time directed at the human fleet. Human vessels. This matter does not concern your species. Withdraw or share the fate of the Valorians. Elena sat in the command chair of the Remembrance and smiled. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting 300 years for this moment. Carnaxal swarm. This is Admiral Elena Kovac of the Human Defense Fleet. You made a mistake coming here. You threatened people we care about. People who saved us when we had nothing. So let me explain something to you very clearly. You're not leaving this system. You're not retreating to dark space. Today your species learns what happens when you threaten humanity's friends. She cut the transmission and opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships execute Protocol Darkfall. Show them what we brought. The human fleet activated weapon systems that the swarm sensors couldn't fully understand. The space around Valoria lit up with targeting locks and power signatures that shouldn't have been possible with known technology. The swarm charged forward, confident in its numbers and experience. They had fought desperate species before. They always broke eventually. The relativistic missiles launched first. They crossed the distance to the swarm fleet in microseconds. The swarm's bioships tried to evade, but you can't dodge something traveling at 99% light speed. 300 swarm vessels simply ceased to exist, torn apart by kinetic impacts that released more energy than fusion bombs. The swarm mind registered surprise for the first time in centuries. These weapons were beyond what their intelligence had predicted. But numbers would still prevail. They swarmed forward, launching biomatter projectiles that could tear through conventional shields. The human ships didn't bother with shields. They deployed nano-weapon countermeasures instead. Gray clouds expanded from the human vessels, meeting the bioprojectiles in space. The swarm watched in horror as their weapons were consumed and converted into more nano-weapons. Their own ammunition turned against them. Elena watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Fire quantum disruption cannons. Let's tear some holes in reality. The QD cannons fired and space itself screamed. Beams of twisted physics lanced through the swarm fleet. Wherever they hit, the bioships didn't just die. They were erased at the quantum level, their matter scattered across multiple dimensions. The swarm couldn't regenerate from that, couldn't learn from it, could only watch as hundreds more vessels vanished into non-existence. The hive mind felt something it had never experienced before. Fear. These humans weren't fighting a defensive battle. They were hunting. Every weapon was designed not just to kill, but to completely annihilate, to leave nothing behind that could regenerate or learn. The swarm tried to retreat. The hive mind calculated that tactical withdrawal was necessary to analyze these new weapons and develop countermeasures. "Oh no, you don't," Elena said softly. "Commander Liu, deploy the pursuit drones. I want every ship that tries to run." The human fleet released swarms of AI-guided drones, millions of them, each one no bigger than a fist. They chased down fleeing swarm vessels like wolves hunting deer. The drones burrowed into bioship hulls and detonated, not with explosives but with nanoplague weapons. The swarm ships began consuming themselves from the inside out. The battle lasted 6 hours. The swarm threw everything they had at the human fleet. Bioacid that could melt through armor, boarding organisms that could take over enemy ships, psychic attacks that tried to overwhelm human minds with the force of the hive mind's consciousness. But humanity had prepared for all of it. The armor was nano-reinforced, constantly repairing itself. The ships had isolated compartments that could be vented into space if boarded. And the human minds? The swarm found that humans had a natural resistance to psychic attack, probably because human consciousness wasn't naturally unified. Each human was an individual, and the hive mind couldn't find a single point of attack. Elena ordered the boarding operations when the swarm fleet was reduced to half strength. Human Marines in sealed armor teleported directly onto swarm bioships. They carried weapons specifically designed to target the neural clusters that controlled the vessels. The Marines moved through the organic corridors of the swarm, ships like surgeons cutting out tumors. Precise, efficient, merciless. They found the neural clusters and destroyed them with bioweapons that humanity had engineered specifically for this moment. Viruses that attacked hive mind organisms, toxins that shut down distributed consciousness, weapons that the galaxy would have called war crimes if used against sentient beings. But the swarm wasn't sentient in any way the galaxy recognized. It was a plague, and humanity had brought the cure. The swarm tried one final desperate gambit. The remaining bioships formed up and prepared to ram the human fleet. If they couldn't win, they would at least take some of the humans with them. Elena had been waiting for this. Fire the dimensional weapons. End this. The experimental weapons had been developed by humanity's best scientists, weapons that could tear holes between dimensions. The human fleet fired them directly into the massed swarm formation. Reality broke open. The bioships were pulled into a dimensional rift, scattered across parallel universes where the fundamental laws of physics were different. They would die in those alien dimensions, unable to adapt fast enough to survive in places where matter itself behaved differently. When the rift closed, the swarm fleet was gone. 10,000 ships reduced to nothing, and the human fleet stood intact, having lost only 300 vessels to the swarm's desperate attacks. But Elena wasn't finished. She opened a channel to the science teams. Did we track their dimensional signature? Can we find their home space? The head scientist appeared on the screen, a woman named Dr. Sarah Reeves. Yes, Admiral. We know where they came from. We can open a rift directly to their breeding dimensions. Do it. I want their home world sterilized. I want every swarm organism in existence dead. If one cell survives, it could rebuild. This ends now. The human fleet opened dimensional rifts and sent through weapons that would have made the Galactic Council weep. Nanoplague bombs, quantum disruption devices, biological weapons engineered to kill every variant of swarm organism. The breeding dimensions of the Carxul burned with fires that would last for generations. When it was over, Dr. Reeves ran the analysis 3 times to be sure. Admiral, they're gone. Every breeding world is dead. Every bioship we can detect is destroyed. The Carxul swarm is extinct. Elena broadcast on all galactic frequencies, making sure every species heard what came next. This is Admiral Elena Kovac, to the Galactic Council, and any species listening. The Carxul swarm is dead. Every ship. Every breeding world. every trace of their existence erased from normal space. You wanted to sacrifice the Valorians to save yourselves. Instead, humanity eliminated the threat you were too frightened to face. She paused and her voice became hard as steel. Let this be a lesson. Humanity remembers its friends, and we remember its enemies. The galaxy chose politics over loyalty. You chose mathematics over honor. We chose to fight. And we won. Now you know what we're capable of. Now you know what happens when you threaten people we care about. Remember this day. Remember what happened when humanity paid its debts. The transmission ended. The human fleet moved into defensive positions around Valoria, and the galaxy, watching in stunned silence, finally understood what they had missed for 3 centuries. Humanity wasn't just another species. They were something far more dangerous. They were loyal. 3 months after the battle, the Galactic Council reconvened. This time they met on Earth. Every species sent their highest representatives. They came in diplomatic ships, unarmed and displaying symbols of peace. They came not as equals negotiating with a mid-tier power, but as subjects seeking audience with something they had badly misjudged. Elena stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, where the meeting would take place. She watched the alien ships arrive one by one. The Nexus Collective, who had pushed hardest to abandon Valoria. The Kresh Federation, who had abstained from the vote. The Terulian Empire, who had supported humanity but only with words, not action. Commander Liu joined her at the window. They're all scared of us now. Every species in the galaxy saw what we did to the swarm. They're wondering if we'll do the same to anyone who crosses us. Good, Elena said simply. Let them wonder. Let them remember. 300 years ago, we were helpless refugees drifting through space. The Valorians saved us because it was the right thing to do. The Council wanted to sacrifice those same people to save themselves. The galaxy needed to learn that some things matter more than survival. The Council chamber was built to accommodate 200 species. The seats were arranged in circular tiers, with the most influential species traditionally seated in the center. Today, those seats were empty. At the highest tier, overlooking everyone else, sat humanity's delegation. Not because they demanded it, but because every other species insisted. The Nexus Ambassador, a crystalline being that refracted light into rainbow patterns, stood to speak first. His voice resonated with harmonics that the translators struggled to process. Humanity, we come to offer our deepest apologies. We made a grievous error in judgment. We allowed fear to override principle. We chose what seemed practical over what was right. We watched you stand alone against impossible odds, and we were proven wrong. The Carxel swarm is gone. The threat that destroyed 12 civilizations, ended by one species who refused to abandon their friends. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Other ambassadors rose to add their own apologies. The Kresh admitted they had underestimated human capability and resolve. The Terulians confessed they had been too cowardly to act. Species after species stood and acknowledged their failure. Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo listened to them all with a calm expression. When the last apology had been delivered, she stood. The chamber fell silent. Every species waited to hear what price humanity would demand for their failure. 300 years ago, Sarah began, her voice clear and strong, the Valorian Collective saved 50,000 humans. They gave us technology, resources, and hope when we had nothing. They asked for no payment, expected no reward. They simply helped because the living must care for each other. Those were their words. The stars shared freely. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from species that had evolved in oceans, in gas giants, in crystalline matrices. All of them had heard of the Valorians' philosophy. Few had truly embraced it. When the swarm came for them, you voted to let them die. 147 species decided that Valorian lives were worth less than avoiding a difficult fight. You told yourselves it was logical, practical, the moral choice when measured against billions of other lives. Sarah's voice hardened. You were wrong. Not because of the mathematics, but because you forgot something essential. The galaxy isn't held together by trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. It's held together by trust, by the knowledge that when darkness comes, your neighbors will stand with you. You broke that trust. You showed every small species in the galaxy that if a strong enough threat appears, they'll be sacrificed for the greater good. The council members shifted uncomfortably. They knew she was right. They had been living with that knowledge for 3 months. watching their own smaller allies grow suspicious and fearful. Humanity has demands, Sarah continued. First, the Valorian system becomes jointly protected territory. Any threat to Valoria is treated as a threat to humanity, and we will respond with the full force of our military. Second, humanity receives permanent seats on all major galactic councils with full voting rights. Third, every species here will sign the Remembrance Accord. She pulled up a holographic document. The accord is simple. It states that debts of honor must be respected, that species who have helped others in times of crisis cannot be abandoned when they need help themselves, that the galaxy recognizes some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds seem impossible. The Nexus ambassador spoke up. And if we refuse to sign? Sarah smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Then you'll know that if you're ever in trouble, humanity won't be coming to help. You'll know that you're on your own, and you'll remember what we did to the Carxel swarm, and you'll wonder if someday you might face that same fury alone. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species argued that humanity was overreaching, making demands from a position of newfound military strength. Others pointed out that humanity had earned the right to make demands. They had done what the entire Galactic Council couldn't or wouldn't do. The vote took 3 hours. In the end, every species signed the Remembrance Accord. Even those who voted reluctantly knew they had no choice. Humanity had revealed capabilities that terrified the galaxy, weapons that could erase ships from reality, weapons that could kill at 99% light speed, weapons that could tear open dimensions and sterilize entire worlds. But more terrifying than the weapons was the will to use them. Humanity had shown absolute commitment to protecting their friends. They had risked extinction to honor a 300-year-old debt. What would they do to enemies who threatened them directly? After the vote, Elena met with Ambassador Trilix in a private garden on the orbital station. The old Valorian looked at her with tears in his large eyes. Admiral Kovac, I don't know how to thank you. Your people saved us. You risked everything. Elena shook her head. You saved us first. 300 years ago you gave us the stars. You showed us kindness when we were helpless. Everything humanity has accomplished since then, we owe to you. This wasn't a sacrifice. It was a payment on a debt we could never fully repay. Trilix made a soft sound, almost like a laugh. The Council is frightened of you now. They see what you can do and they're afraid humanity will become conquerors, that you'll use your weapons to dominate the galaxy. Let them be afraid, Elena said. Let them remember what happens when you threaten humanity's friends. But also let them remember this. We didn't ask for territory. We didn't demand tribute. We asked for the same thing the Valorians taught us 300 years ago, that the living must care for each other, that the stars should be shared freely. She looked up at the blue-green curve of Earth visible through the dome. 300 years ago, Captain James Chen made a promise to your people. He said humanity would never forget. Today, the galaxy learned what it means when humanity keeps a promise. Weeks passed. The human fleet remained at Valoria, a permanent reminder of humanity's commitment. Other species began to reconsider their relationship with humanity. Trade agreements were offered. Military alliances proposed. Every species wanted to ensure they were on humanity's good side. In the council chambers, the seating arrangement remained unchanged. Humanity sat at the highest tier, overlooking all others, not because they demanded superiority, but because the galaxy had placed them there. A reminder of the day they stood alone against impossible darkness and won. The Galactic Council convened for its first session under the new order. The Nexus ambassador stood to open the meeting. His crystalline form caught the light and scattered it across the chamber. The Galactic Council recognizes humanity. We acknowledge your courage, your loyalty, your strength. 300 years ago, the Valorians saved humanity from certain death. They taught you their values, that the living must care for each other, that the stars should be shared freely. He paused, and his voice resonated with something that might have been awe or might have been fear. Today we learned those lessons ourselves. We learned that humanity doesn't forget its friends, that they will move heaven and earth and tear apart reality itself to protect those they care about. We learned that some species measure strength by weapons and territory, but humanity measures strength by loyalty and honor. The ambassador looked directly at the human delegation. We learned what it means when humanity remembers, and we pray that we are never forgotten. The chamber fell silent. Elena sat in her seat and thought about a 9-year-old girl on a dying colony ship. watching beautiful bird people bring food and hope. She thought about Captain James Chen making a promise 300 years ago. She thought about 6,000 human ships jumping into battle against impossible odds because a debt needed to be paid. The galaxy had bowed to the darkness that day, not to the darkness of the Carxel swarm, but to the darkness humanity was willing to become to protect its friends. They had seen what humans could do when pushed beyond their limits, when loyalty demanded more than survival instinct allowed. And the galaxy understood finally and completely that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their quantum cannons or dimensional weapons. It was their memory. They remembered every kindness. They remembered every betrayal. And they would move stars and break worlds to honor their debts. 3 simple words had changed the galaxy forever. We will remember. And now the galaxy would remember too.